So this was my type Safari, and it doesn't really follow the exercise that I'm giving you. It just basically names where I went. So I went to Murphy Street here in Sunnyvale, and I hadn't visited Murphy Street. You know what? I visited Murphy Street, but I've never stopped to really look at the signage. And I was shocked at how much variation there was, and actually how much experimentation, like non-conforming typefaces there were in the space. So as you can see here, these are all letters that I found on Murphy Street. And basically it's only a couple of blocks. And this is just a small fraction of the great amount of different typefaces that were being used in those 2 blocks. I mean, it was pretty impressive. I also took my son with me. I think it's fun that if you go with a buddy than with yourself, because sometimes your buddy sees things that you don't. And so I was doing the exercise with my son, and I was like, hey, we're looking for a letter A. Let's find a really cool letter A. And, we were both sort of like pointing at different things. So it wasn't like this is the only A that I took. I probably took photographs of probably 10 different A's, but this is the one that I ended up using for my montage when I constructed my, example of what I caught on my type Safari. What I'd like you to do is to read chapter 1. You should have read chapter 1 already. But if you haven't read chapter 1, make sure you do that. And chapter 2 and chapter 3 and 4 now. But there's a page, I think it's page 19, that starts with a header that says, fonts tell where you are. And from that point forward, it sort of starts leading into this type Safari exercise and thinking. And that's what I would like you to focus on. So sort of reflect on that. If you just kind of skim the chapter, or this didn't really stand out to you, go back to chapter 1, go to page 19, start there. And on the following page, on page 20, you're going to see an example in the book that shows a type Safari. With that being said, let's go over the outline. So read chapter 1. The goal is to create a visually interesting type-driven composition based on found type. These aren't things that you're going to create, or these aren't font faces that you're going to source on your computer. These are things that you're going to find out in the world around you. The concept. So I'd like this to have a little bit more meaning than what I did, where I just put the name of the street. I'd like you to think of a quote or a song lyric or a prose or line of poetry that you would like to compose with some of these letters. Last time that I did this, I tried guiding the students a little bit more, and I realized that maybe that was a little too stifling. So what I'd like to do is just basically leave that open. How you weave your quote with where you go is up to you. But if you have a quote in mind already, maybe you source fonts or typefaces that you think lend themselves well to that quote or that idea. Okay, so in the past, I tried making it a little bit more like a design problem. I don't think it worked. In this case, I want to do it a little bit more freestyle, but I do want you to communicate something beyond just the name of the street, or something beyond saying San Jose. You know what I mean? Like try to compose something with the letters that you have sourced. So think of a lyric, think of a quote you associate with the area you will use for your Safari. So how you make that association is up to you. This will serve as your content for the design. The quote or the phrase, the lyric, whatever you're going to use, must be 15 to 20 characters long. It can be longer than that, but I think it'll be unnecessary. I think less than 15, it's kind of not enough of an exercise. So I think that within that range, you have a nice, meaningful investigation. So the process, read chapter 1, Why Fonts Matter, go to page 19, in the topic, Fonts Tell Where You Are, start there and sort of reflect on that information. This part of the book literally has the type Safari in it. And then write down the phrase that you want to develop on a piece of paper. And you're going to use this as a checklist. So when you go to the place, or wherever it is that you're going to visit, you can use that sheet of paper, and once you've recorded the letter that you want, you can cross it out and move on to the next one. Try to have fun with this. Visit the area during day at night. I mean, some of the letters might be illuminated, some of them might be neon. There might be letters that you don't see because of the change in lighting. So I think it's interesting to go back, like during at night or during the day, whatever it is that you started off with at first, do the opposite later. because this might provide a more interesting outcome. You might find something special if you look at it from a different point of view and it's illuminated. Once photographs, you're going to take a picture of this. Hopefully you have a cell phone or a digital camera. Compile your letters to make the phrase. And so that's what you're seeing here, is how that compilation might look. Building your designs. Once you have all of your materials gathered, use the design application of your choice. So you can use any application you want. It can be InDesign, it can be Illustrator, it can be Photoshop. I don't really mind what you decide to use, whatever you feel more comfortable with. And compile your letters to fit into a phrase. They should be sort of positioned the way that letters might be positioned so we can read it appropriately. So that means you might have to scale letters up, scale letters down, so on and so forth. Cut them in a way out of the photograph where they sort of fit or read like letters. And you can see examples of this in your book as well. And I've given you an example up there. Places to go, if you're sort of stumped, where can I go to find a whole lot of letters all at once? University Avenue in Palo Alto, Willow Glen in San Jose, San Pedro Square in San Jose, Murphy Street, Sunnyvale, Castro Avenue, Mountain View, Claremont in Berkeley, Santana Row, San Jose, downtown Redwood City, downtown Menlo Park, downtown Saratoga, downtown Los Gatos, anywhere where it's kind of a shopping district would be an appropriate place to go. Now, it just occurred to me, you'll notice I don't have any malls. I guess a mall would be a good place, but when I think of the safari, I usually think of more of an outdoor setting, but it's really up to you how you want to do it. But I was thinking get out, get some fresh air, walk around. Once again, the software, it's open, it's your choice. What size document? I'd like you to make it an 8.5 by 11. So that way we have a uniform size that we're all sort of working with, and just, frame it nicely in there. All right, extra credit. So I do have some extra credit. How much is this worth, by the way? This is worth 30 points, but it is part of your project component. Remember, our grades are broken up into different categories. So this falls in projects. Extra credit, 5 points. If you clip out your letters perfectly, if you can do that. And I might show a little example of how you might do that in the different softwares. All right, so clip out your letters out of their background. So I didn't do that with mine, as you can see. I didn't clip them out, right? I just framed them in a little square, but I didn't clip them out. So you clip them out perfectly. Another one is to make a background for your exercise. So maybe you clip them out and then you create some sort of gradient or put them on some sort of color, or just make some sort of background for them. So it's not just floating on white, and see how that turns out. You do one of those two things and I'll give you 5 points for each one of them. I think the clipping is a little bit more involved, but it might look more beautiful in the end. Presentation, you're required to turn in a JPEG of your design. So whatever software you make this in, export it as a JPEG, save it as a JPEG, submit that here. And then you're going to share it in a discussion. And there's the link to the discussion. And it's just like our other discussions. You basically just upload it there. There's a little prompt that basically says, introduce yourself. What is your name? Where did you collect your letters? Tell us where you went. Maybe it's multiple places. I don't know. What did you consider a success? And what would you refine if you had more time? And then I'd like you to just make comments on two other posts. Some students are only responding to one, and it's kind of like hurting their grade a little bit. Make sure you respond to two, okay? Respond to two.